topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to Leadership for Life with Gina Gardner on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Join your host, who is a multiple #1 international best-selling author, motivational speaker, empowerment and transformational leadership coach and trainer. She's the founder of Genuinely You and has 30 years experience of helping people step into their genuine, authentic power. And now, here is Gina Gardner, your host of Leadership for Life.
Hello there, and welcome to today's show, which is all about confident conversations. And as you know, this show is called Leadership for Life. It doesn't matter whether we're talking about in your personal life or in your professional life. You're the leader of your own life. And those conversations are just so important. I'm going to be joined later, at least I hope I'm going to be joined later, by Yvonne Silva, who is a master of communications, particularly for women in business. But I wanted to spend this first part of the show sharing with you a couple of situations that have come up this week that have really highlighted to me how important communications are, and having confidence to actually speak your truth authentically, being able to say what you want to say in a way that is heard by other people and in a way that doesn't upset people, doesn't make people feel right or wrong, but just enables you to be there in a confident and competent way, speaking, writing, any form of communication. Now, there's been something that's happened this week which has really highlighted to me just how vital communications are. So on Saturday, I picked up from the airport a Ukrainian refugee who's coming to live with me. Now, I know no Ukrainian. Even after a few days, my Ukrainian is just hello, goodbye, if that. And her English, when she first arrived, was pretty well non-existent too. So the art of communication was really highlighted in terms of how do you communicate effectively. And it's been an incredibly powerful lesson because I've been using all sorts of translators using my phone, Google Translate, and another one called Say Hi. And all of them have their strengths and their weaknesses. But one thing's really clear is you have to think about what you're going to put in them, whether you're writing or speaking, so that the translation is clear. And it's been an incredibly big metaphor for life, really, because when you are not clear about what you want to say and you just blurt it out without thinking, what you get for the most part, when it's translated, is gobbledygook. And that's the reality when you're speaking to other people. If you're not clear about the message that you want other people to receive, and you don't break it down into something that is actually manageable for them to understand, then the message doesn't go through. But what most of us do a lot of the time is we think because we're speaking that the other person is not only listening, but actually truly hears what is said. And that's not true. We listen, maybe, but are you taking it on board? And moreover, are you taking it on board in the way in which it was intended? Because there is often a gap between what you think you've said and what you have intended and what the other person takes on board and hears. You know, I've often said to clients that in any relationship of two people, there are three languages. I speak my language, the other person speaks theirs, and then we have to create a shared language where everybody understands exactly what you mean. Now, this is true when you both speak the same language, because you're using the same words, but you might mean different things. It takes on a whole new feel when you are speaking to someone who speaks a different language. Now, there are different languages in the sense of whether it's Ukrainian or English or French or Urdu. But there's also very different languages that are going on in terms of our blueprint for life. Now, all of us have a blueprint for life. It's how we expect things to be, and it's usually created by the way in which we've been brought up, at least initially. So we are conditioned to expect certain things, and we have a blueprint for what love looks like, what our relationship with money is going to be like, how we think that any event in our life is supposed to be like, because often they're not how we think they're supposed to be. And when that blueprint is not met, people feel very unhappy. It can make them feel very frustrated because they assume that the other person is going to see things exactly as they have done. And we each see the world and everything within it from our particular perspective. It's like putting on a pair of glasses and they are coloured and they've got marks on them. Somebody else will have a different colour pair of glasses and they will see things in a different way. And it's only through communication that we actually come to common ground. We come to find words, phrases, tones of voice that the other person can actually understand. Now, the science of communication is something that's pretty well researched. And they talk about that, in any given conversation, over 50% of that conversation is done through body language. And we've talked about this in the show before. So if you're smiling, but you're saying, I hate you, there's a mismatch. If you're saying thank you, but the tone of voice is thank you, there's a mismatch. So it's only when all of these things are aligned that the communication is really effective. So over 50% is body language. Over 30% is your tonality, and the thank you is a perfect example of tonality. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. The tone gives the meaning rather than the word. So how often are you using a tone of voice that is not aligned to the words that you use? But how often do you say nothing because you don't know how to say what you really want to say without upsetting the other person or getting upset? How often do you say nothing and feel resentful, or say nothing and say nothing and say nothing and then just blow up and the other person has no idea that it's coming because you've not spoken to them, you've not communicated with them along the way. So communication, whether you're speaking or you're writing, there's so many opportunities for things to become messed up, for there to be wires crossed. Texts are a great example of that. Your intention when you send a text can be very different to the reality of the person receiving that text, because that's going to be coloured by their blueprint, by how they're feeling. If they're feeling rather vulnerable and you send a text that they interpret that's got an edge to it, that feels as if it can be unkind, that will be the meaning that they make of it. Or if there's something really important that you want them to understand and to take on board, but actually they don't see it as important because of the way you've communicated it, there is a real problem. Now, I work a lot with people personally and professionally, and I've done a lot of work with couples. And, most of the time, when you get to the bottom of what the problems are within any relationship, whether that's an intimate relationship between husband and wife or partners, or friends or business associates or business partners, there are two things, in my opinion, that make the difference. The first is the level of communication and how effective that is, and how honest and how authentic it is. And the second is, are the values of those people closely aligned? And one of the challenges so often in relationships is people don't communicate what their values are. They make assumptions. So I was talking to somebody only last week who's in a relationship. They're desperate to have a family, but the woman in the relationship doesn't want children. Now, they've been married for 5 years, but they didn't talk about it before they got married. And now it's causing monumental problems because what they want out of life is so mismatched. So your communication is incredibly important, but underpinning that communication, what are the values that you have and do they match? The last thing I want to say before we go into a break and then I introduce Yvonne to you is every word that you speak or not, every word that you write and share or not, leaves a living legacy. What do I mean by that? Well, if you are being unkind to someone, that will stay with them for a long time. If you're being kind to somebody, that will stay with them for a long time. And I want you to consider, think about your parents or your teachers and think about those remarks that were made when you were little that still rankle, that still have an impact on your life. You know, you'll never make anything of yourself, or you're stupid, or, you know, you don't know what you're doing. And people that I've worked with years later have either decided to prove that person wrong and it's acted as the rocket fuel to help them achieve success, or it's kept that person playing small and it's really knocked their confidence. I was talking to another client actually yesterday, and we were talking about how his mother always makes a negative comment. Whatever it is, whatever is done, it's never good enough. And there's always a little barb. And I said to him, you know, think about your mum's background. Where would you say her level of confidence is? Is this truly about making you feel bad or making her in some way trying to make herself feel good? And when he thought about it, he said, yeah, she had a terrible upbringing and she had a very unhappy marriage. She is an unhappy lady. And he suddenly recognized that her communication, which was always so negative and he found so hurtful, came from a place where she was hurting. And although one could say there's no logic to it, the reality is that people who are highly critical and who want to put others down, who are sarcastic, very often it covers the fact that they don't have self-confidence and that they don't feel good about themselves. And in trying to make someone else feel less than confident, they're trying to make themselves feel confident. Does it work? No, of course it doesn't. But just think how many things that we do as human beings that ultimately don't work, but we keep doing them. After the break, we're going to be talking to Yvonne Silva, and she is an amazing lady, and I will share her bio with you after the break. So please don't go away. See you in a minute.
You have been listening to Gina Gardner on Leadership for Life. We'll be back after this quick break. Want to get the best out of life personally and professionally? Are you ready to step into a life which excites and fulfills you? Well, the right place for you is Leadership for Life with Gina Gardner on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. We will share with you stories from inspiring people, a wide range of guest experts, and lots of practical strategies to help you get the very best out of your personal and professional life. Leadership for Life is a radio and TV show focused on helping you live a happier, more successful, and fulfilling life. Join international best-selling author, motivational speaker, empowerment and transformational leadership coach and trainer, Gina Gardner, live every Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Become the leader of your own life. Gina Gardner's #1 international best-selling book, Thriving Not Surviving, The 5 Secret Pathways to Happiness, Success, and Fulfillment, provides you with the foundational principles on which to become the best leader of your own life. It's available as an ebook, paperback, hardback, and as an audio from genuinely-u.com, or also from Amazon. Every one of the principles have been proven to work for the countless people who have used them, including the author. Now, let's put them to work for you. If you're ready to discover your true leadership life design, accelerate your journey with an invitation to join Gina for a Leadership for Life VIP Day. Choose your journey of self-discovery where Gina will help you navigate your way to happiness, success, and fulfillment. To find out more, email Gina at genuinely-u.com. Welcome back to Leadership for Life. Here is your host, Gina Gardner.
Hi there. Yvonne Silva is a very special lady. She's a confidence catalyst, speaker, author, coach, and mentor. She teaches ambitious female founders and entrepreneurs with a mission-inspired venture to flourish in business and how to have unshakable confidence so they can move up from solopreneur to CEO. Women often lack clarity and struggle with doubts or imposter syndrome. Yvonne teaches how to showcase value with confident conversations and increase sales velocity, leading to a purposeful, sustainable life, more fun, and more time to spend with the family. So, without more ado, let me introduce to you Yvonne E.L. Silva.
Hello, Gina. Good morning.
Hello there. I'm very pleased to meet you. Before we get started into the main conversation, will you share with people a bit of your story and how you've come to get to this place?
Certainly. You put a lot of emphasis, Gina, just now on the power of words. And that's certainly something that I echo as well. Growing up in London, England, my father had PTSD. He came back from World War II with a bullet in Dunkirk that grazed him. And he ended up showing up as a very angry man and taking that out on my mum, literally draining the dignity right out of her with constant criticisms and constant poor language. And that also impacted me too. Certain incidents created a way that I looked at my mum now, and I look at my mum now and I see her as my unmentor. She showed me what not to do.
Yes.
And now I look at life and say, how can we choose our words more carefully so they're not as hurtful, they're not angry, they're prepared words because we're choosing how we want to respond, not react. And that's part of the work that I do with my female entrepreneur clients.
It's such a powerful thing to do, I think, because when you can communicate effectively in a way that doesn't diminish you or the other person, then what you create is something that's really wholesome and leads to success, doesn't it?
It does. And one of the key things that I do with my female clients is help them to, in essence, take the dream and create something that is a reality that they can monetize. So first they have to visualize it, then they can monetize it, and then we can optimize it, which is where the beach time and family time comes in. And that conscious CEO body of work I've been building out, which is about hiring your team. But we got to have enough momentum first and demonstrate what is the value of the work that we're doing and who is it ideally targeted for. Because if we don't have that clarity, that's one of my superpowers, if you like. You know, as a kid, you used to be able to have a join the dots book or a coloring book.
Yeah.
And the join the dots would be numbered 1, 2, 3, 4. So it was easy to join the lines to make the picture. Well, my clients typically come to me with no lines. They just have scattered dots all over the page of their vision, and they're heart-centered. And I help them see where the joins need to be. Where do those lines need to go from here to here, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, to make a picture that can be monetized, a real business that actually makes money when they're on holiday too.
And that's the ideal, isn't it? That you have a a business where there's a passive income that doesn't require your time.
Mhm.
So you can go and either create more products or go and, as you say, lie on the beach with your family and have a good time.
Yeah.
I'd like to explore with you why you think that so many women lack confidence and the capacity to have such clarity as they need to actually make things work easily.
Hmm. Well, I talk about this more deeply, Gina, in my best-selling book, was
Okay.
Women in Wisdom, The Modern Art of Confident Conversations. And, Sheryl Sandberg with the Lean In organization did quite a bit of work around understanding, what is it about women that, we want to be this good little girl. We want to be seen as nice. We don't want to upset the apple cart. A lot of times our parents told us, children should be seen and not heard. You're probably in the same era as me on that. And we grew up not wanting to ruffle feathers, especially being girls. We're supposed to show up, be, pretty and quiet and not be asking for what we want. Well, that doesn't get you anywhere, because if you don't ask, people don't know you want it, so you won't get it anyway. So what I learned early on that with
Yes.
my dad was, if I gave him a choice, I said I could do this or I could do this, which one do you think is going to be better? Then I had more chance of getting a yes, at least a 50% more chance of getting a yes, because I'd given him two choices. He just had to pick one.
Yes.
So women, I think, grew up not asking for what they want. And then when they got out in the big wide world, women, it's documented through Catalyst and some other women's organizations, women are judged very often on their past experience versus on their future potential when being considered for a promotion. So we have to work twice as hard. So we've got to be twice as clear. What are our results? When did we do it? How did we do it? What did we do? Why did we do it? What was the impact? And make it measurable. So there's no arguing. It's not bragging. It's simply stating what you did in a very forthright way.
It's interesting because I see that our conversation, it's got a number of levels, but there's the level of women in business or women in society recognizing that their worth and not overplaying it, but actually owning it.
Yeah.
And I think that when you truly own your genuine, your authentic power, it's not about making somebody else weak. It is just recognizing that you have that power.
Right.
The other side of it is you're also, many of you, mothers. And so how are you bringing your daughters up? What is the message that you are giving your daughter through your conditioning, through how you turn up on a day-by-day basis? And that came to me very strongly. I was talking to a client last week who was talking about her daughter. Now they're divorced, her and her husband, and it's been a very acrimonious divorce. And there's quite a lot of strained family dynamics. But she was talking about how she had advised her daughter to play the game. And playing the game, actually, in her eyes, before I put the mirror up and said, is that really what you want? Was to be very submissive and then go and do her own thing, rather than saying, actually, do you know what? That doesn't work for me. And her daughter's 18 now, so she's not a small child.
Right.
But if you're watching or listening this, I'd ask you, what are the lessons that you are teaching your children, girls and boys? Because also there's a lesson for boys and for males that's what they expect, perhaps, and to see their partners or their colleagues as equal in importance, but who have the capacity to deliver in different ways.
Absolutely. It's so important that men role model this, both for their boys and for their girls.
Yes.
So that they acknowledge that women deserve respect. I don't care what anyone says. It's never acceptable for any man to hit a woman. Never.
Or I would say for anybody to hit anybody, quite frankly.
Especially women. And, hitting is not a solution. And certainly in my father's case, I mean, yeah, I did get the belt a lot. But it was his viewpoint of the world he was trying to put some structure into a world that for him was very uncertain because of the trauma he went through. And I understood this
Yes.
later. At the time, it just felt like
I'm
a
sh-
really angry, mean man. When he was
yes.
yelling at me at age 11, "You'll never, ever be successful in life," because I flunked my 11 plus. That sat with me for a long, long time. And yet, when we role model for our children, it's amazing what happens. And I shared
Yeah.
a couple of times recently about my son, Alex, who's a special needs. He's now 27. When he was 18, he was watching a Operation Smile telethon where they raise money to put the cleft palate back together for little kids in poor countries. And because of him seeing me as an entrepreneur and working with people to make positive change, decided that he wanted to sell his paintings when he couldn't get his own credit card right away. And he's now raised money for 5 kids to have their smile fixed. So that's impacting, I don't know how many people, but the story of it was on global TV. It was aired with a couple of other groups on TV shows, and also with a group of educators, special needs teachers. And it was like the light bulb went on for them. Oh my gosh, here's a special needs
Yeah.
child who's making such a big impact for 5 kids around the world, raising money with his artwork, selling his artwork. If he can do that, what else is possible for your average 6 to 12-year-old child who doesn't have a physical disability? And
You
so
know,
role model, they see it and they do what we show them, not what we tell them.
I think that's so true. Those who've watched the show or listened to it will know that I was a principal or head teacher for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I look back at how pupils would come and say, we want to do this, and then they would organize it. And I think we hugely underestimate what young people are able to do. And your son is an absolute shining example. He has some cognitive problems, and yet for him, seeing the need and wanting to do something about it was the spur to actually take action.
Yeah, he wanted to see these kids smile. He felt sad for them when he saw what was happening and heard about how they get left at home, and they can't go to school because their parents hide
Yeah.
them away. So they have no potential for learning in school, and that's just such a shame. And even he recognized that he was able to step into his potential by looking at, what am I really good at? What do I love to do? And that's this, it's a similar concept to what I go through with my clients is let's
Yes.
get to the bottom. What are your skills, interests, passions? What is it you cannot not do? You're just
Yeah.
compelled to do it. You're pulled into it without even trying. And how can we then monetize that gift so that you have services and you have product so that it's balanced? You're doing what you love with people who love you and love what you do. And it evolves from there. I'm still learning. I mean, just yesterday, Gina, I gave someone some feedback in the context of an event we were in, and it didn't
Yeah.
land well with them because what I was looking for was embodiment and alignment of here's what you're doing in the world, here's how you're showing up, and here's how you're demonstrating that you are an expert in this. And it wasn't in alignment. And so I need to go back and have a refresh conversation about that. So we're always learning, but how, as you said earlier, how we present something and how it lands with someone, I think it landed differently because of what was going on already that day for her.
And I
Had it been
think that's
today, it
just,
would have landed differently.
I think that's such an important lesson. How your day is going, whether you're under pressure, all of those things are going to make a difference in terms of how you take things on board.
Yeah.
And I think so many people are a victim to their life. Life is happening to me.
Right.
And when they're in that place, then the level of tolerance at one level in terms of how much people tolerate, but also they go into reactive mode.
Yeah.
When we're really under pressure, we go into our habitual patterns of thinking,
Right.
rather than really listening to what's going on and asking the question, what's the true motive here?
Right.
They've just gone into reaction, and that reaction means that often heads butt And then people are very clear about, I need to be right, and that makes the other person wrong.
Yeah, and it's so key to acknowledge. I mean, people are people, right? We
Yeah,
mess up. So it's not the fact that something got messed up, it's how do we handle it afterwards, which is
yeah,
what's going to keep the relationship intact. Now, as a coach, if I'm in a big, Zoom room, I get to decide, like, am I going to have an ongoing relationship with
yeah.
this person? Or am I just going to give them a gift of frank honesty that probably their friends wouldn't tell them?
No.
Because they want to retain the friendship. Well, I don't need to be everybody's friend. So here's a gift. Here's a first impression. Here's feedback. What you choose to do with it will be entirely up to
Yeah.
you. How it lands is going to be dependent on what's happened already in your day. And I had a week from hell last week too. So I know that there are some things that, I handled differently because of how it landed with me, with my upbringing with my dad, as I mentioned. Um, constant criticism, anything that sounds like a criticism, I'm a work in progress too. I learn and I go, ooh, hang on, oh, don't want to react to that. So I put in my book a concept of a pause statement.
Yeah.
Hmm, that's really interesting. Let me get back to you on that. I want to give that some thought. And then you walk away. And if you have that rehearsed and practiced and ready to go in a moment's notice, it's like doing a fire drill. It just
Yeah.
rolls off the tongue when you need it, because when you're in the heightened emotion, you won't be able to think of the
Yeah.
words and you'll stumble and then you'll possibly destroy a relationship.
That's really powerful. And that pause, if you add, and I'm sure that's probably part of what you do, if you add some real deep breathing to that,
Hmm.
that your pause and your breathing take you from your left brain thinking, where you tend to catastrophize and
Yep.
it's very black and white, and you go into your right brain thinking, where you not only is that where your work on relationships and communication are more effective, but also you're dealing with creativity and choice. And so the landscape is just very, very different. But having something ready, rehearsed, another time when I think having something really well rehearsed is, if you're always someone who gets put upon and you find yourself saying yes when you haven't got time, or it's actually detrimental to your health because you're going to be under huge pressure, having something rehearsed to say, actually, I'd love to help on this occasion, but I have a prior engagement. Or if it's your boss saying, I've got a lot of priorities here, so I'm happy to do it, but if I do this, which one would you like me to let go or do later? And I think that pre-framing is really, really important.
Yeah, definitely. I have another classic one too that works extremely well, especially for women, because that's the group that I work with, primarily entrepreneur women who are seeking to flourish, is if I can't do that for you by that timeline, what's your best next option?
I
So
like that one.
you're not saying no, hard no, I'm not doing it, especially if it's your boss. But what
Yeah,
you're saying is, what else have you, if I can't do it, what by when you need it, what are you going to do? And you're
yeah,
not taking the monkey on as
yeah,
yours. It's their monkey. If you come to me as as my boss at 5 o'clock on a Friday and you expect something to be done just like that, well, that's your bad planning, really,
yeah,
unless it's, an emergency situation, somebody's been in an accident or something. But
yes,
generally, when we push back a little bit, politely, respectfully, people
yeah,
give it more grace. So, when do you really need it by? Oh, I need it yesterday. When do you really need it by? And you just
yeah.
look at them and you pause and you don't let the silence feel awkward. You just let it hang and let the silence do the heavy lifting. And then
Isn't silence
they'll say,
powerful?
yeah, they'll come back and they'll say, well, if you could have it to me by Tuesday at lunchtime, I won't get to look at it until then. Great. If you can do it by Tuesday lunchtime, great. You'll have it on your desk before then. And then you say, as promised, here's the dot, dot, dot. So you're reinforcing that
Yeah,
when you commit to something, you deliver on it.
yeah. That's really great stuff. I was smiling to myself because, I think silences are highly underrated, that sometimes we feel we've got to fill that gap. And many people fill that gap by saying yes when what they really want to say is no, because it feels awkward, it feels uncomfortable. And I think that, learning to live with that discomfort, we're not talking about for 43 hours, we're talking about for a couple of minutes, can be really helpful. Now, where can people find you?
So they can find me at my website, my speaker website, which is YvonneSilva.com. I think there are some extra places that have been running through the bottom of the screen. I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably the best place to connect with me. Also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And the thing I want to leave with the listeners is really to consider, our language comes based on the choices we make based on our values.
Yeah.
So as a nurturing personality, I value harmony, I value congruence, I value community and making a difference and personal growth. They're all important things for me. So when you are communicating, if you communicate in the preferred communication style, knowing the values of the person you're talking to, it's not about you, it's about how they hear it. And if you're talking about, yes, go, 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 action, action, and they're a knowledge technical person, they want the data, they want the proof, the evidence, they don't want rah, rah. So knowing who you're talking to based on their values and your values connecting, we can have so much more resonant conversation, deeper connection very quickly. That's that whole sales velocity piece that you mentioned at the beginning in my bio, particularly because my clients, they want to get off the ground quickly. They want to start having a profitable business. Well, you got to get comfortable asking for a sale. How do you do that? It's through connection and understanding how the person wants information given to them based on their preferred communication style. And then you can cut the conversations from 10, back and forth, to maybe 3 conversations. And time, as as a self-employed leader,
very, very precious,
valuable resource. We can't get it back. It's non-renewable once it's gone. So let's leverage our communication powerfully to get what it is that we want to communicate shared and in a reciprocal manner that leverages the power of positivity and the energy of reciprocity.
Sounds absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much. Now, we're very proud to be members of B1G1, Buy One, Give One. And it's a very important organization to me. They have projects all over the world. I think they, because those projects are so well managed and vetted, and also that they have a sister organization that raises the money to run the organization. You know that every cent, every penny goes to the projects that you're donating to, and they break them down into what they call impacts. So if they're talking about clean water, then they cost out what it costs to give one person clean water for a day. So it's very, very affordable. And we invite every guest to choose a project. And this month's projects are Food for the Hungry, Clean Water, Education, and there is a project for to support children who are still in the Ukraine with the difficult situation that's going on there. What would you like us to donate to on your behalf?
Well, I always believe that education is just such a powerful tool. I mean, I'm a sustainable development goals fan. Education, equality for women obviously is linked closely to what I do. So education would be my choice. I also donate, with my book, I donate one for every per hard copy sold to Women's Shelter Foundation or not-for-profit. So not organized through the Buy One, Give One group, but still Buy One, Give One concept. And I do that in stacks of 10 for charities and women's shelters. And it comes back, Gina. I had someone reach out on Facebook saying, hey, you're the author of Words, Women, and Wisdom, the Modern Art of Confident Conversations. I said, yes, I am. That was on my shelter nightstand when I was in a bad place. And now I'm just about to write my own book and a course and an e-course. And clearly she'd turned her life around. I don't know what impact my book had, but she remembered the title. So I'm
going to say, for somebody to remember the title and to be able to let you know that they had, it must have had a pretty big impact.
Yeah.
While you're listening or you're watching this, I just want to remind you that for every 100 downloads, we feed someone who's hungry. So please spread the word, get it out there. We'd love to be donating lots and lots of meals. I would really love it if there was never a need for a charity to feed anybody, but sadly, that's the world that we live in. So ultimately, if you're listening or watching, you can make a difference. And all you have to do is to listen, watch, and share as much as you can. Yvonne, it gives me great pleasure to have had you on the show. Thank you so much for being my guest. Thank you very much. We've only got a couple of minutes left. And in that couple of minutes, what I'd like you to do is to really think about your communication. Think about the people that you spend your time with. And think how often there is a time when you trigger other people or other people trigger you into feeling frustrated or difficult or whatever. And recognize that that's part of a habitual pattern. That if you're thinking consciously, actively aware of what you're saying, the tone of voice that you're using, and the context that you're speaking in, you can make a huge difference to the quality of communication that you have with your loved ones, with your colleagues, with your team, with the world in general. I believe that confident communication is the key to great relationships. But within that, also think about how you speak to yourself and about yourself. So whatever you're going to do, take care, have a great week, become the leader of your own life. See you in the next show. Bye-bye now.
You have been listening to The Leadership for Life with your host, Gina Gardner. Make sure you tune in to W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV next Thursday and every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for more Leadership for Life. If you missed any part of this episode or just want to hear or see it again, you can find the archive of the TV show on Talk 4 TV's YouTube channel and the podcast of The Leadership for Life on iHeartRadio, Pandora, Spotify, Amazon Music, and wherever you listen to your podcasts.